Good morning. Welcome back to Gravity, a place to keep you grounded in the scriptures, even if you can't make it to church on time. Today we will be continuing our Gospel of John, that you may believe. We are talking today about life and light in verses 3 through 5. And so let's go ahead and get started. It says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him nothing was made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men, and the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it." Now, what we see here is that John shocks us again, right? He told us last time, hey, Jesus is the Logos of the power of God. He is the Logos of the wisdom of God. He is the combination of both those things. He was there in the beginning. He is God. He is part of the Trinity. He tells us all these magnificent things that blow our minds completely. And then he does it again here. He says all things were made through Jesus. Now, the Greek word for through is dia, and it can mean on account of, because of, through. I'll give you an example. If I'm studying for a test and I study really hard and I pass the test, I pass the test because of hard work. I pass the test through hard work. I pass the test on account of hard work. So you kind of see how dia can be all those things. And so all things were made, I like this idea, because of Jesus. You think about it. Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, when God creates day and night, when he speaks it in verse 2 into existence, it says, "In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. Then God said, 'Let there be light,' and there was light." Now think about this. All those days, if you want to open up to Genesis chapter 1, all these days were through Jesus, by Jesus, for Jesus, because of Jesus. You have day and night. Day 1, day 2, the heavens. Day 3, you have the earth and the seas divided, grass small, and then huge, massive redwood forests, all because of Jesus. Day 4, you have the stars and the moon and the sun, all because of Jesus. Day 5, sea creatures and birds. We're talking like little plankton and massive giant squid because of Jesus. Day 6, you have animals and stuff created because of Jesus. But then the apex, the climax of all creation is man. Verse 26, then God said, "Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness." Verse 27, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him, male and female he created him. And then my favorite part of this, chapter 2, verse 7, "And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground, breathed his nostrils the breath of life, and became a living being." The word formed is the same word used when talking about sculpting. God formed it with his own hands, and he breathed the breath of life into him. Now, we need to remember that for our study that we're doing here in a second. But concerning Jesus' role in creation, I want to share with you what the Apostle Paul had to say on the subject. Hold on. He said, there it is, "He, Jesus, is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For by Jesus all things were created that are in heaven and that are on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. All things were created through him and for him. And he is before all things, and in him all things consist." And I love the idea of it saying consist, because if you think about that, that's like Jesus holding things together. If the moon was too close to the earth, the tides would wipe out whole villages that are next to the ocean. If the sun was just a mile closer to the earth or a mile further from the earth, then the earth would be a ball of fire or an ice cube. And so you think about Jesus holds all these things together. There's other scientific things too. I was a biology teacher, but I don't want to go into detail on cellular respiration, photosynthesis, and cycles. It's amazing all the things that if you just lessen a little bit, entire ecosystems and entire ecologies and entire systems of life, like in the North America, would cease to be if only a certain nutrient became deficient. It's amazing. So it's important for us to think about how Jesus is holding things together. But if we go back to John chapter 3, we see that it says all things were made through Jesus, right? And here in Colossians, a second ago, it said that all things were made by Jesus, for Jesus, and there's that word again, through Jesus, or because of Jesus. And so really the main point that we need to understand from John, that I would recommend you understand, is not only the divinity of Jesus as we go through the life of Jesus here in John, but also this: all things are made for Jesus, by Jesus, and because of Jesus. That's important to understand. Now, you might wonder, well, Nathan, if we were made by Jesus, for Jesus, and because of Jesus, then what are we for? Like, what's the point? Open with me to Revelation chapter 4. I'm going to give you the basic answer first, and then we're going to spread outward from there. Revelation chapter 4, verse 11 says, this is when the 24 elders fall down before Jesus, who sits on the throne and worships him, and who lives forever and ever, and casts their crowns before the throne, saying, here's what they say, verse 11, you are worthy, O Lord, you to receive glory and honor and power, for you created all things, and by your will they exist and were created. Wow. By God's will, by Jesus' will, we're here simply because God willed us. It was his desire. That's the most basic answer I can give you. Now, to give you a more specific answer, you might write this down. Isaiah chapter 43 verse 7 says something like, all things, all men was created to glorify God. All men. You and I are supposed to glorify God, which brings us to a more specific answer. How do we do that? Let me first illustrate for you with a flashlight. This flashlight, if I bought 100 of these and they didn't work, would they glorify their manufacturer? No. Now, this is a mag light. I've never had any problems with mag light. But if I were to buy 100 of these and they did not work, then I would be kind of irritated. Let's say I sent them back thinking the manufacturer just had an error. They sent me 100 more and they didn't work. I'd be like, what? And I would totally send it back and stop buying Maglite. But these work. The point is, if this Maglite doesn't work, does it glorify its manufacturer? No. Or if I'm a security guard and I just set it over here on the side and I never use it, and I go out into places that are dark and I never take my flashlight, does that flashlight glorify its manufacturer? No. It must be used according to its design, and it is a flashlight. It's supposed to cast light, right? So let's think about our design, if you will. And the best way we can think about our design is to first think about the image of the design we were made after, which is God. God says in Genesis, we've already read these verses, let's make man in our image. He created man in his image, male and female, he created them. So you think about it, we are made in the image of God. What does God look like? We don't know what God looks like. We know from Genesis chapter 1, he's relational in the Trinity. He's creative. He has life that he can give. We know that in the rest of the Bible, he's forgiving, he's loving, he's kind, he is jealous. He's a lot of different things. And we as human beings are in the image of God. That's our design. That's how we're supposed to be. And yet, it's kind of hard for us to understand God. Which is why in Colossians it says that Jesus is the image of the invisible God. We are supposed to to look at Jesus as that example of the image of God on earth so that we can see how we should be. You see, look at Jesus, then look at God, and that will help you determine your design. Now, you cannot do it unless you accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior, because He is the image of God. Now, here's the next thing. If we go back to John chapter 1, verse 4, in Him, Jesus was life, and the life was the light of men. John's gospel is about Jesus' life, and it is the life to all men. You're going to find in this book the ministry of Jesus. You're going to find some miracles, some signs. You won't find any parables. It doesn't have a single parable in the book of John, because John wants Jesus' life to be the message. Okay? And so we have to think about this, that this right here in the book of John, it is the life and the light of Jesus that shines in our lives. It was shining in John's time, and that continues to shine. Look at verse 5 with me. For the first time we have a present tense verb, and the light shines in the darkness. It shines currently, presently. Jesus has died, He's been raised, He's got to be with His Father. The shining hadn't stopped. It continues to shine through man, and it says, it shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it. Now, I want to talk about the word comprehend real quick. It can mean, if you're looking at a different translation, it might say overcome. The word there can mean either comprehend or overcome, but those two words don't mean the same thing. The word is meant to have multiple meanings, like the word grasp. You ever try to grasp a wet bar of soap? You can't overcome it to use it, and it slips right out of your hand. So grasp is physical, but it's also mental. Trying to grasp the Trinity, good luck with that. But that is a mental grasping, a comprehension, so it means both. So I put in my Bible, I underlined comprehend, and I put grasp out to this side. You might want to put, if you have comprehend, out to the side put overcome. Or if you have overcome, out to the side put comprehend. So you know that it can be dualistic in meaning. Why did John write it that way? I think he meant to. Because though there is darkness, it cannot overcome the light. Satan has been trying to overcome the light since the Garden of Eden. And he was successful a little bit at that time, right? He's been trying to overcome the life and the light of God in Job. Unsuccessful. And he tried to overcome the life and the light of Jesus in the wilderness in tempting Him. Unsuccessful. But then, after all his toil, Satan is so excited because he gets Jesus on the cross and Jesus stops breathing. He gives his spirit up. He dies. Satan, I think, celebrated for 3 days. 3 days. And then on the third day, out of that tomb, I want you to imagine a supernova of light that extinguishes the dark places in that tomb. An explosion of the life and the light of Jesus in the resurrection. And that resurrection allows all men to understand that there is a continuing message. The life and the light of Jesus is something that we continue to tell people about. It shines in our lives and it shines into other people's lives. Satan could not overcome it. Now, men try to overcome it as well. Look at China. China's been trying to overcome the life and the light of Jesus because they don't think it's good for their government. In 1949, there was less than 1 million Christians. They're estimating, because it's such a fast-growing population, that by 2050, that it will be 60% of the Chinese population. That's more than in the United States, proportionally. You cannot extinguish the life and the light of Jesus. But there's a reason Satan could not do it. It's because he could not only could he not overcome it, but it's because he can't comprehend it. The life and the light of Jesus is something that is from God, and God is the creator of Satan. And Satan cannot comprehend all that God is because Satan is not infinite like God. I think the reason Satan cannot comprehend the light is because every time he walks by a mirror, he just looks at it, just like that. and he just can't stop looking at himself. I know that was a weird look, but he can't stop looking at himself. He is overcome with self-love, his own self-image, and his own self-wisdom. He cannot get behind it. He cannot get beyond it. And that's the reason why people sometimes do not accept Jesus, is they cannot get past their own wisdom. And I am telling you today, if you want to shatter that mirror of looking at yourself and you want to look at something better, which is Jesus, and beyond that, God, then the way you shatter that is to begin to ask questions. What's my purpose? What's my design? What am I created for? And I will tell you, if you don't know the answer, it is quite simply for you to shine the life and the light of Jesus to other people. You remember in Genesis chapter 2, that really intimate creation story of God forming man and out of the dust, and then him breathing into him the breath of life, making him a living being? Today there are a lot of piles of dust and piles of mud walking around this earth. Now I'm telling you, there's a lot of people created by God that have not accepted Jesus and need that second, better breath of life, the one that goes beyond just giving you a human existence into eternity. As Jesus came to us, that life and light came to us, and we accepted it, and it breathed a new life into us. It is now your design, being in the image of Jesus and God and following in his footsteps, to shine the life and the life of Jesus into other people, thereby breathing the life into them. That's your design. Brothers and sisters, shine the light. God bless you. Have a good day.